My parents abandoned me 8 years ago. So when my doorbell camera showed them standing on my front porch at sunrise, I thought I was dreaming. They didn't knock. They didn't call. My father quietly placed a gift-wrapped box on the welcome mat while my mother looked directly into the camera and whispered, "Whatever happens, don't let him see what's inside." Then they drove away. I opened the box expecting an apology. Instead, I found something that made my blood run cold. Within 30 seconds, I was dialing 911 because the man I trusted most was about to come home. At 6:17 on a Thursday morning, my doorbell camera sent a motion alert to my phone. I almost ignored it. Usually it was delivery drivers, neighborhood kids cutting across lawns, or my retired neighbor Karen walking her overweight golden retriever at sunrise like she was training for the Olympics. Still half asleep, I rolled over and opened the app, and immediately sat upright in bed. My parents were standing on my front porch. That alone was strange. My parents never showed up unannounced. Not once in the 7 years since Ethan and I bought this house in Naperville. My mother believed surprise visits were what emotionally unstable people did. Yet there they were. My father stood near the steps holding a medium-sized wrapped box with both hands while my mother kept glancing nervously toward the street like she expected someone to be watching. The timestamp in the corner read 6:17 a.m. Too early for casual visits. Too early for normal anything. I turned the volume up. Neither of them knocked. Neither of them reached for the doorbell. My father carefully lowered the box onto the welcome mat while my mother stepped closer to the camera. For a second, she just stared directly into the lens. Her face looked pale, tired, almost frightened. Then she said something that made the hair rise on the back of my neck. "Whatever you do, don't make a scene." My father touched her arm immediately after she said it, like maybe she'd already said too much. Then both of them walked quickly back toward their car. 30 seconds later, they were gone. I stared at my phone screen in complete confusion. No texts. No missed calls. Nothing. I checked the date, wondering if I'd forgotten some family event. Anniversary? Birthday? Holiday? Nothing. My birthday wasn't for another 4 months. Ethan's was in November. Christmas was nowhere close. I replayed the footage 3 more times. Each time, my mother's voice sounded stranger. Not angry. Not emotional. Warning me, like whatever sat inside that box was going to change something permanently. I grabbed my robe and hurried downstairs. The wrapped package sat exactly where they'd left it. Silver paper. Dark blue ribbon. Perfect corners. My mother always wrapped gifts beautifully. Even when I was little, her presents looked like they belonged in department store windows. But this didn't feel like a gift. The second I picked it up, my stomach tightened. It was heavy, much heavier than I expected. And whatever was inside shifted awkwardly when I moved it. Not fragile. Not electronic. Dense. I looked down the street through the front windows. My parents' Lexus was long gone. I considered calling them. Instead, I called Ethan. Straight to voicemail. I frowned. He was probably already inside the executive meeting he'd mentioned the night before. Quarterly budget review. His company treated those meetings like classified military operations. No phones. No interruptions. I set the box carefully on the kitchen island. For almost a minute, I just stood there staring at it. The silence inside the house suddenly felt wrong. Too quiet. Too still. Finally, I slid my finger beneath the ribbon and pulled it loose. The paper came off easily. Underneath was a plain brown storage box sealed with thick, clear tape. No label. No handwriting. Nothing. That was what unsettled me most. My mother labeled everything. Christmas decorations. Old tax records. Extension cords. If she handed you a flashlight, it probably had an index card attached explaining battery life. But this box had nothing. I grabbed scissors from the drawer and cut through the tape. The lid opened slowly. At first, all I saw were folders. Manila folders stacked neatly beside several sealed envelopes. On top sat a single white envelope with my name written across the front in my mother's handwriting. "Read this first." My pulse started speeding up. I opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a 2-page letter. "Sweetheart, before you panic, You need to understand we didn't want to believe this either. We spent 3 weeks checking everything because we prayed there was another explanation. There isn't. You cannot confront Ethan until you finish looking through everything in this box. And whatever happens next, please remember this is not your fault. My hands went cold. I kept reading. The letter explained my parents had discovered something accidentally while helping my aunt refinance property in downtown Chicago. At first they thought it was clerical fraud. Then Ethan's name appeared. Again and again. My father started digging. What they found terrified them enough to bring evidence directly to me instead of the police. At the bottom of the second page, my mother had written one final sentence. If even half of this is true, you may not actually know the man you married. I dropped the letter onto the counter. My chest tightened so fast it felt hard to breathe.
No.
Impossible. Ethan and I had been married 9 years. 9 good years. He was calm, responsible, dependable. The kind of man who reminded me to rotate my tires and refill prescriptions before I ran out. This had to be some misunderstanding. Some paperwork error. Hands shaking, I opened the first folder. Property documents. Bank statements. Photographs. Then another folder. More records. More signatures. More hidden addresses. Every single document carried Ethan's name somewhere on it. My heartbeat became painfully loud inside my ears. I opened the final sealed envelope, and the second I saw what was inside, my knees nearly gave out. I grabbed my phone so fast I almost dropped it, then I dialed 911. The 911 operator stayed calm while I struggled to explain what I was looking at. I'm not in immediate danger, I said, trying to steady my breathing. But I think I've found documents connected to identity fraud, maybe financial crimes. My husband doesn't know I have them. There was a brief pause. Ma'am, please don't confront anyone. Officers are on their way. I ended the call and looked back at the folders spread across my kitchen island. For several seconds, I couldn't force myself to touch another page. Every instinct told me to throw everything back into the box and pretend none of it existed. Instead, I opened the next folder. Inside were copies of property records from 2 neighboring counties, 3 different rental homes. Each one listed under a limited liability company. At first that meant nothing to me. Then I noticed the registered manager's signature. It matched Ethan's. Not his printed name. His actual signature. Exactly the same looping E he signed on birthday cards and mortgage papers. A loud knock interrupted my thoughts. Naperville Police. I opened the door to find 2 officers standing outside. One introduced himself as Officer Daniels while his partner, Officer Ruiz, carried a small notebook. I invited them inside. They listened without interrupting while I explained everything from the mysterious package to my mother's warning. Officer Daniels carefully read the letter before setting it down. Did your parents say why they didn't bring this directly to law enforcement? They wanted to be absolutely certain before accusing anyone. He nodded slowly. That was probably the right decision. Officer Ruiz began organizing the documents into neat stacks. Neither officer rushed to conclusions. Instead, they asked careful questions. When did your parents discover this? Have you noticed unusual financial activity? Does your husband have access to all household accounts? With every answer, I felt more embarrassed.
No.
I hadn't noticed.
No.
I hadn't questioned late-night business trips.
No.
I hadn't wondered why Ethan insisted on handling most of our investments himself. Looking back, the warning signs suddenly seemed obvious. At the time, they had looked like trust. Officer Daniels asked for my parents' phone number. Within 30 minutes, they arrived. My mother walked into the house clutching her purse so tightly her knuckles had turned white. The moment she saw me, tears filled her eyes. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I wanted to be wrong. My father looked older than he had just the day before. He sat at the dining table and quietly explained everything. 3 weeks earlier, while helping my Aunt Denise organize property records after refinancing her condominium, he'd found Ethan's signature on paperwork connected to an address none of us recognized. At first he assumed it was an administrative mistake, but curiosity turned into concern. Concern became suspicion. He hired a licensed private investigator. Not because he wanted to destroy my marriage, because he desperately wanted proof that Ethan was innocent. Instead, every report uncovered another inconsistency. Additional addresses, business registrations, financial transfers that didn't match Ethan's salary. Everything had been independently verified before they ever wrapped that box. "I couldn't tell you over the phone," my father said quietly. "If we were wrong, we'd ruin your marriage. And if we were right," my mother added, "we were afraid you'd confront him before knowing everything." Officer Ruiz carefully examined another folder. "These records appear legitimate, but we'll need detectives to verify every document." Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Meeting ended early. Heading home. Be there in 20 minutes. The room instantly fell silent. Officer Daniels looked up from the paperwork. "Does he know about any of this?" I slowly shook my head.
No. Good.
He stood and adjusted his radio. "When he arrives, let us handle the conversation." My heart pounded so hard it felt impossible to breathe. Part of me still wanted someone to tell me this was all a misunderstanding. That Ethan would walk through the door laughing about some paperwork mix-up. That my parents had made an honest mistake. Then I noticed one final photograph lying beneath the last folder. It showed Ethan standing outside one of the rental properties. The timestamp was only 11 days old. He wasn't alone. Standing beside him was a woman I'd never seen before. Both of them were smiling as they unlocked the front door together. Before I could process what I was seeing, headlights swept across the front windows. A car engine shut off in the driveway. Ethan was home. The front door opened before anyone had a chance to move. "Hey, sweetheart," Ethan called. Traffic wasn't as bad as I expected. He stepped into the foyer carrying 2 grocery bags. Then he froze. His eyes moved from me, to my parents, to the 2 police officers standing in the living room. The smile disappeared from his face. What's going on?" Officer Daniels stepped forward calmly. "Mr. Carter? I'm Officer Daniels with the Naperville Police Department. We'd like to ask you a few questions." Ethan looked at me. "Emily." I couldn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, because I honestly didn't know who I was looking at anymore. He slowly set the grocery bags on the floor. "This has to be some mistake. We're simply trying to understand several documents brought to our attention," Officer Daniels replied evenly. Officer Ruiz placed a folder on the dining table. Ethan glanced down. His expression changed for only a fraction of a second. But I saw it. Recognition. Not confusion. Recognition. "I've never seen those before," he said quickly. Officer Daniels nodded. "All right." He slid another document across the table. "This signature appears to match yours." Ethan barely looked at it. Anyone can copy a signature. Then came another record. Another address. Another financial document. Another photograph. Each answer from Ethan came faster than the last. "I don't remember." "That isn't mine. I signed something without reading it. There's a reasonable explanation." The explanations never matched. Not with each other. Not with the paperwork. Not with the timeline. The confidence I'd always admired in him slowly disappeared. For the first time in our marriage, he looked genuinely cornered. Officer Daniels remained professional. "No conclusions are being made today. These documents will be reviewed through the proper legal process." My father quietly handed over the investigator's report. Every address, every business filing, every financial record had already been independently verified. The room fell silent. Ethan lowered his head. After nearly a minute, he finally spoke. "I should have told you." His voice was barely above a whisper. "I made decisions years ago that turned into bigger problems. I thought I could fix everything before you ever found out." I stared at him. "So, all of this is real?" He closed his eyes. "Yes." The single word hurt more than anything else I'd heard that day. Not because it answered every question. Because it confirmed my parents hadn't destroyed my marriage. The truth had. Officer Daniels explained that detectives would continue reviewing the evidence and determine whether any criminal laws had been violated. Until then, everything would proceed through the appropriate legal channels. Nobody was placed under arrest. Nobody raised their voice. The chaos I had imagined never happened. Instead, everything ended with quiet honesty. After the officers left, my parents stood beside me in the kitchen. "I'm sorry," my mother whispered again. I wrapped my arms around her. "For leaving the box?" She shook her head. "For knowing it would break your heart." I hugged her tighter.
No.
I looked at both of them. "Thank you for making sure I learned the truth before making a decision I'd regret." 3 months later, I filed for divorce. The financial issues were handled through attorneys and investigators. I rebuilt my life one careful step at a time. Some mornings were harder than others, but every morning was built on something I finally had again: the truth. Looking back now, I understand why my mother looked into that camera before driving away. Her warning was never about protecting Ethan. It was about protecting me. Because sometimes the hardest gift you'll ever receive comes wrapped like a present, but inside is the truth that finally sets you free.